The Dominion mocks Earth's silence, dismissing it as a sign of weakness. But when they finally push Earth too far, they witness the terrifying power that lies beneath humanity's calm exterior. Earth's response is a force that shatters their arrogance and changes everything. The alien council's chambers were filled with the low hum of various consoles, but the atmosphere was thick with the echoes of smug superiority. The last transmission had been received. Earth had stayed silent. No resistance, no cries of defiance. The council members, each one alien in form and mind, exchanged knowing glances. "Typical," one of the councillors said with a sneer. His elongated fingers tapped the armrest of his chair. "They hide behind silence, as if that means anything. It's the last desperate defense of a defeated race." Another alien, a towering figure with gleaming scales, chuckled. "They thought they could escape our judgment, but no amount of silence can save them now." They all agreed, their minds wrapped in the same dismissive thought. Earth, an insignificant backwater planet, had played its final card, silence. The Dominion had already conquered entire star systems with ease, and Earth would be no different. One more planet to add to the collection. "Prepare the fleet. We'll show them that silence is not the same as peace," the fleet commander said, his voice dripping with mockery. "Deploy 10,000 ships. This time, we make sure there's nothing left for them to hide behind." They laughed. They were confident. The silence they thought was a sign of Earth's surrender, but the true weapon of humanity was not its firepower. It was something far more dangerous. They hadn't realized that yet. Back on Earth, Captain Emily Rourke stood before her crew, her eyes cold, reflecting the stars outside. They had not responded to the Dominion's taunt, not a word, not a plea. Silence, and the Dominion had taken it as victory. "Captain, the Dominion fleet is on its way," Harrison reported, his voice low. "They're bringing everything." Rourke nodded slowly. She knew what was coming. The Dominion believed they had won. Earth had done nothing, but Rourke understood what they didn't. Humanity's silence was not a sign of weakness. It was the calm before the storm. "We're not waiting for them to strike first," Rourke said quietly. "We're going to make sure they regret thinking Earth was defenseless. Prepare the weapon." Lieutenant Harrison blinked in surprise. "The weapon, Captain? Are you sure?" "It's not fully calibrated yet." Rourke's eyes were resolute. "We don't need calibration. We need a message, and it's time we delivered it." As the Dominion fleet approached Earth's orbit, they saw only the vast, empty silence of space. The silence that had made them feel invincible. But as they moved closer to the planet's atmosphere, something began to shift. Suddenly, the sky above Earth cracked open. A flash of light, blinding and powerful, erupted from the planet's core. The sheer force of it bent space itself, sending shockwaves rippling through the fabric of the universe. The Dominion fleet, once so certain of their victory, now trembled as they watched a new power rise from the heart of Earth. "Impossible," the fleet commander whispered, his voice barely audible over the roar of chaos. The silence had been shattered. What was once a quiet planet was now the epicenter of an energy wave so powerful that the entire fleet was pushed to the brink of collapse. "Get out of its path," one of his officers screamed. But it was too late. The energy pulse, a calculated and precise weapon designed by the humans, tore through the Dominion ships with surgical precision. In an instant, 10,000 ships were rendered useless. Their shields collapsed, their systems short-circuited, and the once unstoppable fleet became nothing more than wreckage in space. Back aboard the human ship, Rourke allowed herself a single moment of satisfaction as she watched the Dominion fleet falter. The weapon had worked, but the war was far from over. The fleet might have been broken, but the Dominion had yet to learn the true lesson. "They thought it was mercy," Rourke said softly, her voice steady. "It wasn't." She turned to her crew, her expression hardening. This is just the beginning. They will come again, but they will come with the fear of what they've seen today, and when they do, Earth will show them why silence can be the deadliest weapon of all. As the final remnants of the Dominion fleet retreated, Earth's silence returned, except this time it was the silence of power, of a planet no longer to be underestimated. The Council scrambles to comprehend the impossibility of the human warship. It is far more advanced than anything they had imagined. As they struggle to piece together the implications of Earth's newfound power, they are left with a chilling realization. Humanity's silence wasn't weakness, it was a strategic weight. And now, Earth has decided to strike. The Alien Council. Chamber was now a cacophony of noise, each member shouting over one another in an attempt to gain control of the situation. A once dominant force, sure in their power, was now rattled by an unexpected force from a species they had written off. The moment the human warship appeared, everything changed. That ship, it cannot be real, shouted one of the council members, his voice high-pitched with disbelief. We've monitored Earth for centuries. There's no way they could have built this. Another member, her green skin flushed with a mixture of anger and fear, turned toward the nearest console. Our sensors must be malfunctioning. This can't be Earth. The energy signatures are beyond our capabilities. We need to verify. As the others argued in the background, the head of the council, an imposing figure with smooth black skin and eyes that glowed like molten lava, stepped forward. His deep voice, though calm, was laced with a tone that betrayed his growing unease. Verify. Immediately, he commanded. A handful of alien technicians scrambled to their stations, feverishly working to confirm the details of the approaching ship. On the holographic screen, the human vessel hung like a dark omen, its sleek form reflecting the starlight in a way that made it look almost alive. It was far too advanced for a species that had been presumed to be a peaceful, insignificant planet dweller. Impossible, the technician muttered under his breath. The propulsion system. This doesn't align with anything we know about Earth's technology. There was silence for a moment, the kind of silence that gripped a person's chest and made it hard to breathe. What do we know about them? The voice of the head of the council was calm, but sharp. His patience was wearing thin. The entire council had become consumed with trying to dismiss this impossible reality. They'd been silent for so long. They had their wars, their skirmishes, a voice chimed in, the source coming from the far left. It belonged to one of the younger members. They were, I don't know, complacent? Complacent, the leader snapped. You call that complacency? He motioned toward the hologram with a wave of his hand, his fingers trembling as if trying to control the impossible. That ship is built for annihilation. It should not exist. The room fell silent once again as the reality sank in. The Council, the most powerful beings in the galaxy, was being outclassed by a species they had written off as primitive and insignificant. Their silence, another council member whispered almost to himself. It wasn't weakness, it wasn't surrender. The young technician stood at attention, his face lit up with both confusion and awe. They're not just defending themselves. The trajectory of this ship, it's heading directly for us. The head of the council turned toward him sharply. What do you mean? This isn't a random approach. It's calculated. There's purpose behind it. They're targeting us. His words hung in the air, heavy and dangerous. The realization hit the council like a sledgehammer. Earth wasn't just retaliating for some slight. This wasn't a desperate attack from a species backed into a corner. This was a calculated declaration, and it was happening now, with every second that passed, making the impending confrontation more imminent. The leader of the council began to pace back and forth. His long, thin fingers tapped the surface of the floor in agitation. Their strategy must have been in place for a long time. Years, maybe decades. This ship, He stopped and looked directly at the hologram. This ship is their answer to the galaxy. To us. The first voice to speak again was the one who had mocked Earth's silence earlier, his tone now twisted with fear. Are we sure they have no backup? No allies? No, the leader answered firmly, his eyes narrowing. This ship is alone, but make no mistake, it doesn't need backup. He paused, staring at the image of Earth's vessel, its engines humming with an unnatural power. This is the culmination of their waiting, of their strategy, and they have made it clear Earth is no longer a passive species. The weight of that realization landed on every member like a crushing wave. For centuries, the Galactic Council had asserted dominance over lesser species. They had crushed rebellion after rebellion, wiped out resistance, and subjugated planets without a second thought. They had operated with the belief that Earth, a backwater planet stuck in the dark, ages was no threat to the galaxy. Their silence had been interpreted as compliance, as an acceptance of their place at the bottom of the galactic food chain. But now that silence was nothing more than a facade, a mask hiding something far more dangerous. The alien council leader stepped forward once again, his voice low and deadly. "Prepare the fleet," he ordered. "We need to respond, and we need to respond now." The holographic projection of Earth's warship flickered and adjusted, as though it had been watching them the entire time. The technician's hands shook as he rapidly tried to analyze the ship's movement, but it was all too fast, too precise. "They're not just approaching, they're closing in, faster than we anticipated." "We've underestimated them," the council leader muttered, his eyes burning with a mixture of rage and frustration. "They are not the weaklings we thought them to be, and we will pay for it." "Not yet," a voice interrupted. It was the voice of the young technician who stood now on the verge of panic. "The energy readings are spiking. They've activated weapons." The council leader's eyes widened. "What are they waiting for?" The technician hesitated for a moment before answering. "They're waiting for the perfect shot." He looked around at the panicked faces of the council members. They've been waiting for this moment for years. The gravity of the situation gripped the room. Their underestimation of humanity had cost them the advantage, and now it was too late to turn back. "They thought it was mercy," the leader whispered to himself, "but it wasn't." A sharp, crackling sound filled the air as the warship from Earth began to fire its first barrage, tearing through the fabric of space like a wound in the universe itself. And at that moment, the sky above the alien council ripped open. As the alien fleet scrambles to respond to Earth's unexpected attack, the destructive power of humanity's warship becomes clear. The Council, in its arrogance, failed to grasp the depth of Earth's power, and now they are forced to reckon with the consequences of underestimating a species they thought they had already defeated. But even as they scramble, the warship's true nature begins to unfold. The sky above the alien fleet began to glow with an eerie, unnatural light. The first shots from Earth's warship had already torn through the space around them, causing ripples in the fabric of the galaxy itself. The fleet, once so proud and vast, now found itself reeling from an assault they couldn't hope to repel. The head of the council, his sharp features drawn in grim determination, stared at the chaos unfolding on the holographic screen. The once immense fleet was now a disjointed mess, ships darting in every direction, trying to avoid the devastating energy blasts that cut through their formations like a knife through paper. The immense power of the human warship had torn through their defenses, breaking their tactical lines without hesitation. "They were never this powerful," one of the council members gasped, his voice trembling with shock. "They've surpassed us." Another council member, an elder with long, silvery skin and a stoic demeanor, stepped forward. "We should have known," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "Their silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. They have had decades to build this ship." The young technician who had earlier spoken of the warship's trajectory stood frozen at his console, eyes wide in disbelief. It's not just the ship, the entire fleet, they're reacting like nothing we've ever seen before. The council leader didn't reply immediately. His eyes remained fixed on the destruction. His thoughts were racing. He had underestimated Earth, assuming their species was too primitive to develop such advanced technology. They had watched, waited, and dismissed humanity's potential for centuries. But now, the galaxy was watching as their arrogance crumbled. They thought it was mercy. It wasn't, the leader murmured under his breath. His voice had lost its usual confidence, replaced by something far darker. Fear. One of the fleet commanders, panicked, transmitted an emergency message to the council. We cannot maintain our positions. Their firepower is beyond anything we've ever encountered. We need to retreat. Now. The council leader's expression hardened. Retreat? They will not give us that luxury. We are far past the point of retreat. On the holographic screen, Earth's warship loomed closer. Its dark hull gleamed, reflecting the starlight in a way that seemed to mock the alien fleet's attempts to flee. It was precise, calculating, and completely in control. The shockwaves from each blast it fired spread across the battlefield, pushing the alien ships back with brutal efficiency. The lead council member raised a hand, his voice calm, but filled with an urgency that carried through the room. We must strike back. We need to launch a counter-offensive now, before it's too late. Another council member, a younger one, shook his head. We're being blindsided. Their technology is far beyond ours. Their ships are maneuvering with unimaginable speed. It's almost as if they knew we'd be here, as if they knew exactly what we would do. There is no time for theories. The leader snapped. Get the fleet into position, now. But even as the words left his mouth, it was clear that it was already too late. A series of explosions lit up the dark expanse of space as Earth's warship unleashed another barrage. The shockwaves reverberated through the alien fleet, causing even the larger ships to break apart in a hail of debris. They had no chance of countering this kind of firepower. The arrogance that had guided their entire existence was rapidly turning to dust. The leader of the council's gaze shifted. His expression was still cold, but his eyes held a flicker of something far more. Human regret, we miscalculated, he said almost to himself. We thought them weak. We thought their silence was surrender, but now we are the ones who must face the consequences. The young technician, still in shock, looked up at the leader. They're advancing again, faster than before. It's like they've known every move we would make. Of course they know, the leader replied bitterly. They've had centuries to observe, to learn, to adapt. They were waiting for us to let our guard down, and we did. And now, his voice trailed off, the weight of his realization settling in. Now we pay the price. The alien fleet, scattered and disorganized, was no match for the human warship's precision. One by one, the alien ships began to fall. A destroyer exploded in a burst of light, its hull vaporized in an instant by a single shot. A larger capital ship tried to make a run for it, but before it could even jump to hyperspace, Earth's warship fired again, and it too was obliterated. There was no mercy, no hesitation, just destruction, and the Council could do nothing but watch as the galaxy's balance shifted in an instant. The Council leader clenched his fists, his teeth grinding in frustration. He had spent years overseeing the galaxy's dominance, ensuring the galaxy's supremacy over lesser civilizations. He had believed that humanity was nothing more than an afterthought. Now, Earth's devastating response had shattered that illusion. The universe had just witnessed the first true glimpse of what Earth was capable of, and it was unlike anything anyone had ever imagined. As Earth's warship drew closer, the leader knew that there was no escape. Their time was running out, and they could only watch as humanity's quiet, patient vengeance consumed them. They thought it was mercy. It wasn't, the leader whispered again, this time with a sense of finality. And with that, the stars themselves seemed to tremble. The alien fleet was no more. The once proud warships lay in ruins, scattered like debris across the vast expanse of space. In the wake of Earth's warships' unrelenting assault, there was nothing left but the cold, desolate void and the broken remnants of an empire that had overestimated its own strength. The head of the council stood motionless, his gaze fixed on the empty space before him. His eyes were wide, but there was no more disbelief, only the cold truth. The galaxy's most powerful force had been reduced to nothing in a matter of hours, swept away by a force they had underestimated. He had believed, like the others, that Earth's silence was a sign of weakness, that their quiet years were a surrender, an unwillingness to act. He had mocked humanity for its primitive technology, dismissing them as a backwater species clinging to the past. But now, in the final moments of the conflict, the truth was undeniable. Earth's silence had been a trap, a patient, calculated move that had culminated in the destruction of everything the Council had built. The Council leader slowly turned away from the holographic screens, which now showed only the emptiness where their fleet had once stood. He could no longer find words. There was no rhetoric left to soften the truth. They had failed. They had failed miserably. One by one, the other council members fell silent. There was no longer any bravado, no more mockery. The reality of the situation had settled in, and it was crushing. The voice of their civilization had been silenced by a single warship, a warship that had appeared out of nowhere, forged in secrecy, and armed with a power they had never imagined possible. They crushed us, one of the council members whispered, her voice barely audible. Just like that, the leader nodded slowly. We underestimated them. He paused. And now we pay the price for that arrogance. Outside, in the cold of space, the human warship hovered. It had finished its task, its weapons powered down, the threat it posed now a cold, silent shadow hanging in the stars. The galaxy had just been irrevocably altered. Earth's silence had been the calm before the storm, and now that storm had passed. As the final remnants of the alien fleet drifted into the void, the leader of the council felt something stir deep within him, a fear unlike any he had ever known, the fear of what humanity might do next. He had always assumed that the galaxy would remain divided, that the strong would dominate the weak, as it had always been. But now, Earth had shown them that power wasn't just about size, technology, or numbers. It was about something deeper, something they had never understood. Earth had been patient, calculating, and now it had the power to rewrite the fate of the galaxy. The human warship wasn't just a weapon, it was a symbol of Earth's resilience, its resolve, and its determination. The Council had thought they could dismiss humanity as insignificant. They had thought their power was absolute, but now they knew the truth. Earth had become the new force to be reckoned with. As the leader stood at the helm of his shattered council, he looked out at the wreckage of the galaxy they had once ruled. The stars, once a reflection of their dominance, now seemed to mock them. And then, just as the final pieces of the alien fleet were swallowed by the void, a message arrived. The screen flickered to life, and a single line of text appeared. "This is just the beginning." The council leader stared at the message, his expression unreadable. He knew the meaning behind it all too well. Earth had declared its presence to the galaxy, and it wasn't going to stop here. The era of alien dominance was over. Humanity had spoken, and the galaxy would never be the same again. As the screen flickered one last time, the final words echoed through the room. "And now you will all listen." The silence that followed was deafening.